Hello, everybody. Are we ready to go? Thank you all for joining us once again. It's great to see you all here. This is highlight of my month. So, once again, thank you for joining us. Now, we have rather a new format. This is the first in a series of groundbreaking podcasts with world-renowned experts. Today, we're looking at exponential entrepreneurs in the age of AI with our very own Roger Hamilton and Salim Ismail. Over the next hour, they will unravel the secrets of thriving in an AI driven business world. As I said, this is the first in a series of really, really exciting podcasts. So I'm really glad that you were able to join us, and I hope you will enjoy the next hour.
Hi, it's Roger Hamilton here with our very first podcast for our Genius Entrepreneur Mastermind taking place in 2024. And I have with me today Salim Ismail, who's the founder of OpenEXO. Hello, Salim. How are you?
I'm great. Great to be here.
Yeah. Really, really excited for what we're about to share. I'm going to share a couple of slides so everyone can get an idea of not just what our main theme is going to be, but also a little bit about Salim. And then we're going to jump right into a conversation. Exponential entrepreneurs in the age of AI. So the word exponential is one you're going to be hearing a lot about on this call. Salim's book, which is all about exponential organizations. We're going to be talking a little bit about that, but how the whole world is going exponential as well. And Salim basically is, I would say, like the expert at actually having built an exponential model that is now being used by companies and leaders and entrepreneurs all around the world as well. And that really got kicked off when he was in his work, first of all, at Yahoo, work he's done with a lot of exponential companies like Google, and as really the founding CEO of Singularity University as well. There's very colorful stories that Salim has of traveling around the world, meeting up with heads of state as well as with Fortune 500 companies, where basically he delivers, together with his team, all of these different programs that go from workshops all the way into sprints. EXO Works and OpenEXO all have begun as a global community where there are many people in our community that are joining Salim's community and vice versa, because all of us are focusing on the same thing, which is how can we make sure that we are preparing ourselves for the exponential world ahead. And the team found this quote, which I love. Today, if you're not disrupting yourself, someone else is. Your fate is to be either the disruptor or disrupted. There is no middle ground. In the future, defining metric for organizations won't be ROI, return on investment. It will be ROL, which is return on learning. So very much the kind of things that we talk about as well. And Salim, because this is all about Age of AI as well, I'd love for you to share with the most recent version of your book, what has been the big changes that have happened as a result of the fact that AI has made things even more exponential?
I think the biggest, first of all, great to be here, and I love this community, and obviously the topic is so incredibly important today. You know, it's pretty clear we're going through the biggest transition in humanity in like the history of the world, and it's happening like right now. Um, the when I wrote the original version of Exponential Organizations 10 years ago, it was actually a much harder conversation because it was hard to point to the disruption. I'd tell people that Tesla was going to totally take over the world, and they go, you know, like they barely got the first model out. It's never going to work. The big German car companies will quash them, etc. And then it's a much easier conversation now. And the advent and launch of ChatGPT and the generative AI models has basically blown that open now, because now we're looking at massive job destruction, transformation of companies. Peter and I talk about the fact that the next billion-dollar company will be 3 people and using a bunch of AI tools, right? And that will be the model going forward on, and we'll be honing in on that over the next few years as people start to leverage these models and apply them fully. Probably the most dramatic thing I've heard recently is from the head of AI at MIT, who's looking at 400 different AI startups. And he said, what we're going to see in 2024 is 1,000 times more powerful than we saw in 2023. Not like 5x or 10x more powerful, like 1,000x more powerful. That just blows your mind. So I think in terms of AI, we've like hit the singularity. the pace of change is faster than we can process or absorb it now.
Well, I mean, I want to dive into this a little bit because it's a very interesting thing. We just ran our first AI micro school, and the speed with which different entrepreneurs just got up to speed with what was happening, but hadn't been up to speed because there is so much happening so quickly that's taking place out there as well. And this graph here, I just wanted to share because I just wanted your comment on this as well. That this whole thing like AI, everyone's been hearing it everywhere, but this whole thing about basically like the Magnificent Seven and the companies at the moment which are really leading the stock market in terms of their growth, and it really is quite incredible. Like you mentioned, Tesla. Obviously, you can see here, the other companies we have, like, Apple and Meta and Amazon are all in here, Alphabet, Nvidia. What's really super interesting about this is if we were to go back like 10 years, none of them would have described themselves as AI companies. So it wasn't like that it wasn't like, tech companies when they started and they all had .com at the end of their names. None of them really started saying AI, with maybe Nvidia, who were always basically preparing for this day. Even Tesla wasn't talking about itself being an AI company the way it is now. So in a way, these massive companies themselves have pivoted. And the fact that you've got companies now that are growing like ridiculously fast, like a startup in terms of their growth in their market caps, but they're massive at the same time. So you mentioned, you could actually have billion-dollar businesses, which are just a few just a few people. Same thing, you could be a pretty large company, but you can still, with AI, suddenly pivot in a way it wasn't so easy to do it. With tech to begin with, right? In terms of being AI enabled versus like, tech enabled. Love for you to just share a little bit about, when you talk about one of the biggest issues that companies have, which is this whole idea of basically the immune response system. How important it is to overcome that, and what the payoff is today of overcoming that in this age of AI.
Yeah, I mean, this first twigged on me when I was the head of innovation at Yahoo, running their incubator. And I learned a fundamental lesson that's been driving a lot of our thinking since then, which is you try anything disruptive in a legacy big organization and the immune system attacks you, right? And the reason for that is all of our big organizations are architected for two things. They're architected for efficiency and for predictability. If you're Unilever, you're trying to deliver the same bar of soap in a million locations with the same quality, same packaging, etc. Same with McDonald's or Ford or any of the biggest companies in the world. Well, today you need to be architected for agility, flexibility, adaptability, speed. And so that's one massive shift. And you're not organized. What struck me was that, okay, I've seen this type of problem at banks or telcos that are slow to embrace disruptive. But Yahoo's a Silicon Valley company and less than 10 years old. Why should it have this problem? And it was the CTO of Autodesk, Tom Kowalski, who basically said, oh, it's the immune system problem. And that kind of lit off a light bulb in my head. And basically, it's imperative today for any legacy organization to overcome that cultural problem if they're going to embrace this new world. And it's near impossible because this is not something they teach in MBA school. It's a business problem that we've never seen before because the metabolism of that industry was just not that fast. And therefore they had time. They had years to figure out, okay, new products been in, or new paradigms been introduced. Let's slowly embrace it, bring it into our supply chains, build new products with that, whatever. Today, that cycle is like months and weeks, right? And so how do you navigate that? There's a great example of this, which is the company Illumina, which makes high-speed gene sequencing machines. And at the peak of the explosion and acceleration and the drop in genome sequencing, the shelf life of one of their machines was 9 months. Okay, but it took 28 months to build a machine. So they had to have 4 product cycles being built in parallel to hit the 9-month sales cycle.
Right.
It's just unbelievable. And they just were able to do it better than the others. And it happened to be about how you organize. So there's a tech disruption angle, which is we can now see very clearly now. And the second part is how do you organize to take advantage of that complete new way of thinking? And that's what we've brought together in the OpenEXO community and in the book and the tool sets that we offer.
Yeah, super interesting. I'm going to get into the model so everyone who is not familiar with Salim's model can just see how OpenEXO has got very specific items that you either do or don't have in your company, and you can either basically, start a new company which has got all these different elements, or create a startup team within your own company, or you can basically start plugging these different elements in. But if you don't have them, it's the difference of a horse and a car from the point of view, basically, they're two totally different ways of transport, but one's only ever going to go at 1 horsepower, whereas the other one can go up to 1,000 horsepower, right? And I think we're going through that same paradigm of human power, where so many of us are like, well, I'm just 1 human power. And when you realize there's someone next to you who's basically at 1,000 human power and can actually go at 1,000 times the speed, then you suddenly realize, okay, it's not even a race anymore, right? So what's super interesting, and I want to give this as basically what is one of the biggest needs that we have seen recently, and it's one in which what's super exciting about this interview is that often when I'm doing the interviews, it's with someone who has a totally different company which is working in parallel towards the same things as us. But in the case of Salim and OpenEXO, we're actually now partnering up together. This actually came out in November last year, where we basically were saying that we're going to be looking to integrate all of the things that Salim is doing within his EXO model, accessing within our own GeniusU, the OpenEXO community. We'll talk about a little bit about that later. Basically, like linking it in with our entrepreneur certification programs. And things have evolved even faster than that, in that some of you might have seen that, we basically announced a merger with FatBrain earlier this year. And this all links in with a partnership that we're talking about right now with OpenEXO as well, which is if you take all 4 aspects of what's needed to create an exponential ecosystem, which, yes, is education, which is basically the schools and universities, but you see this is number 4, and I'll explain why in a moment. Number 1, which is B2C or B2E, which is entrepreneurs. This is where basically people are paying for their own education, and it's because they know they need to in order to keep up. And there's an ROI or an ROL on this. What we haven't been doing before, which is B2B, which is where big corporations, where Salim's working, that they basically have now an even more pressing need to move quickly or else be irrelevant. And B2G, which is the government side, there are a whole bunch of governments which are now stepping up, wanting to create their own exponential ecosystems and AI-driven systems within their own city or country as well. And what's super interesting is where we have been and where we're now going means that within Genius Group, we are now upgrading our mission from what was basically just entrepreneur education to AI education and acceleration, which means actually enabling those who are using AI for the future of humanity. So you don't just end up using AI and learning about it, but you've got an entire AI team that you can now actually be working with for the things that you're looking to learn. And what that looks like in terms of students, entrepreneurs, enterprise, government is we have a lot of our community who are getting certified, getting trained to then be able to deliver to these corporations and to others that are out there as well. And that's where obviously OpenEXO has been. And FatBrain, which is this company we're merging with, they basically have got all these AI tools of pure intelligence, which means that we can basically go and see how we're doing compared to our other industry partners out there. And effectively, it's like, okay, if you now got a motor car, better go join the motor race instead of the horse race, and then you're going to have a whole set of new metrics. And as anyone who watches any Formula One racing goes, you're always watching who's the fastest cars, what innovations are they making, and then you copy them, and you basically then end up seeing if you're able to beat them or not as well. And I think the same is going to be happening within AI, where those that are being enabled are then able to then evolve and grow. So we're building all of our products, and we'll talk about this another time, into basically designing them for this this move we have now got in acceleration. And we're going to go a little bit more into basically the whole concept of scaling ideas in a moment on the model side, but integrating with the tools that already are what Salim and Kent have put together. Kent is Salim's partner with OpenEXO. This then leads into FatBrain and what we're now doing, having both Peter and Michael come and join our board. Michael Moe actually is the founder of GSV, which is the largest edtech venture capital firm in the world. And basically they have been seeing really firsthand just how much there is this huge demand that's taking place at the city level, right? Like, basically this has happened. Saudi Arabia said that now they're going to be a top AI tech hub. Singapore have committed to tripling their AI talent pool. And this is actually super interesting because you never saw this happen in either web, like Web 1, which was the internet and when it first started, or in Web 2 with mobile. Right? You never saw Singapore saying, right, we're going to become a mobile nation. But now at this point, they're actually, no, we have to be doing this because of AI. So maybe Salim, well, first of all, just what I've just been sharing about how we start integrating solutions together and working together. Any comment you have on that? And then why you would say that these governments are all now basically putting everything into this and the reason they're doing that in a way they didn't do it with Web 1 and Web 2.
Yeah, so first of all, there's such a massive complementarity, right? You've found people that want to change the world and entrepreneurs all over the world. Let's point out that the entrepreneurship class is the only segment of society that actually ever makes transformation in the world occur, because it's somebody who has a massive risk appetite and is willing to go for it, and has a vision for how they want to change the world. Elon is probably the biggest and best example of that today, where he's got 3 MTPs of space, energy, and climate issues, and that is training now a generation of leaders and entrepreneurs to do this. I think you bringing that community together and us bringing a tool set and methodology together, I think is a perfect match. So I think super excited to partner on these things. For the AI stuff, when you look at countries or cities or regions, it's very clear to see how they got left behind in the Web 1 world and completely got left behind in the Web 2 world. And they're kind of like, we better not get left behind in this Web 3 world, also in this AI world, right? And so now they're jumping on the bandwagon and moving earlier than some of the others. And there's a very, very important couple of points of what's happening in technology that I think everybody on this that's listening needs to be aware of. The first is that we have a dozen technologies now that are now operating on an exponential growth path and doubling their price performance anywhere from 6 to 30 months. So in neuroscience, for example, the resolution at which we can image the brain is doubling every year, right? Drones are doubling every 9 months in their price performance, for example. So if you layer a solution on top of drones and they're doubling, your solution scales with the underlying technology. And so that's one massive thing. We've never seen in the history of humanity this many technologies all move at an accelerated pace at the same time, right? The second thing that's happening that's even more radical and that we've never seen in history is that throughout human history, it's always been true that advanced technologies cost a lot. And only a big government lab or a corporate lab could do R&D, launch new products and services. Today, for the first time in human history, advanced technologies are very cheap. Solar energy is cheap, sensors are cheap, the models to train AI are now very cheap. The blockchain is open source and free. So it now means that people can do very disruptive innovation at a very low cost. And that's just amazing. So you marry that together with the movement and the wave of entrepreneurship, that is going to completely change the world in a very accelerated pace. And it allows these cities and these smaller countries, which were never powerhouses, to now jump on the bandwagon with a new mindset and completely go for it. And I think that is incredibly inspiring to see around the world.
Yeah, and we're just, as you say, we're just at the beginning of this curve as well. So this is one of those things where whereas before, if you were in Web 1 a year behind or 2 years behind, well, people didn't even have their emails, right? So you're still kind of had a bit of time to catch up. And then there was the whole bust, and then you could come back, and now it's 2002, 2003, and it's 5 years later. Whereas here, every month is like a year, the amount of speed with which things are actually moving. So the extent to which you've actually got the ability to be able to learn and think of that in terms of the way forward, or the pace of innovation. I want to jump right into the model. So anyone who's here thinking, well, how does a human or how does a team even start thinking in a way that basically is exponential? Because we all know that we think generally linear. And I'm going to come back to a few of these, but there's a couple of fundamental things here. The word flexible, agile, how do you actually create something which can grow virally, right, within the company very, very quickly when most companies are actually quite structured. And this here, which is basically driven by purpose, right? How to actually design something where it's actually the purpose, which is the driving force behind it, and the MTP. This one I'd like to come back to as well. And then how do you actually make decisions off the back of this? So when I explain to people the model for EXO, and I'd love your take, Salim, on this in a moment. I actually always compare it because everyone in our community knows all about the talent dynamics and wealth dynamics square, and the fact that there is an aspect of value, which is always what creates the attraction, and then an aspect of scaling or leverage, which is always creates expansion. And what's really interesting about the entire EXO model is ideas is the equivalent of when we talk about value, right? This is a thinking dynamic where all these things allow the ideas to come from the actual network effect itself. And then scale is all about, obviously, leverage, right? Which is basically how do you then scale in a way that you also don't become a bottleneck on the scale side. And so when we launched Genius U, which was coming up to 10 years ago. It was after I had watched Salim walk through this, and in fact there was an assessment that you can do to actually find out just how much you already are basically an exponential model or not. And we kind of reverse engineered it to say, well, we're going to need to have interfaces where the actual customer can come and actually put their own information in. We're going to have that dashboard so they can actually self-learn and then grow without us having to be the bottleneck, right? Experimentation, which allows them to do that. There's got to be autonomy and social, which basically is going to be what drives it all. So all the best ideas actually come from the network, and it can actually grow very, very quickly. And then at the same time, on the scale side, we're going to have to make sure that we basically have a whole partner community, which was our staff on demand, community and crowd algorithms we built from the beginning. And what's really interesting here is we've kind of turned algorithms now into AI, because this is basically all about to what extent can you actually really scale way faster than even the thinking on this side actually enables you to scale. And what's very interesting on this is it means that right now on our GeniusU platform, when someone actually comes in and takes a journey, as a student, they can actually have their own AI who knows all about them, which they can actually start on from here. But if they're a partner who's actually building out their whole platform, then when they join our partner portal, which I know many of the community listening are part of, they basically have this secret little kind of link here that takes them to a partner portal. And on the partner portal, they've now got this Genie AI toolbox, which allows them to build out all their marketing, all their tools in all the different areas with suggested prompts, etc. And where we're building this out into an entire AI team. And that's an announcement that's coming out soon, because one of the programs that we actually set up was not just one Genie, but multiple Genies where each one has a different skill set. This one is Student AI, which Suraj built, which is basically for different, as faculty members you might want within your student side. But imagine it's now for entrepreneurs doing this, where they've got their marketer, their copywriter, their strategist, their researcher, all doing that as well. That's all coming into the AI toolbox very soon, right? And this basically is all about basically this whole idea that if you can really start thinking, am I designing like a bottle? If I am, there's going to be a bottleneck. Am I the one that has come up with the ideas, or is it my board, or is it my design team, or is it actually the community itself? And scaling, do I have to go out and invest money because I've got to go buy assets, or I've got to go recruit people, or is there a way for all of that to scale as well? So if I had to 10x, then nothing would break, right? Because I can actually scale off the back of that. And that's very much how we thought about it when we started designing out. And the MTP obviously was our big mission that we built. But I'd love for you to share. Easier said than done, right? Like, the one thing to reverse engineer, but like you said, there's big challenges in mindset of people actually shifting from one way of thinking to another. And I'd love for you to just speak about that in terms of how you've seen companies overcome that.
Yeah, if you could bring the diagram back just for a second, right?
Yeah, sure.
What we found when researching 10 years ago, the fastest growing organizations in the world, was they all had this MTP that was common across all of them. This fundamental statement like Google organize the world's information, or Uber, everybody should have a private driver, or whatever. And then the scale attributes give you 5 externalities that you can leverage, keep a very small feature footprint and resource footprint, and scale very fast. Right, and that was really critical. Then the left side gives you the 5 internal elements like lean startup thinking, or decentralized org structures, self-provisioning teams, etc., allowing you to drive culture and manage the entire control framework. And what we found is the more you use, the better. And because today, if you're not using all of them, somebody else is. Right. One of the most interesting companies we've seen it came out of Australia, that it was a small public company, and every quarter they had 10 projects running on the 10 attributes. And every quarter they just re-up the projects and go, okay, who's going to take on dashboards and implementing that in this quarter? And somebody would take that on, etc. And they grew like 5x in 2 years. So they're leveraging these capabilities in a cohesive way, then allows you to radically grow quickly.
Well, and you had a whole process which obviously now a lot of your certified trainers are delivering on, which is like the sprint process, right? Which is very much like an agile sprint, but which is very specifically about how do you, when the entire organization is most likely to already going to be a very linear structure, how do you then basically enable this to happen? Can you walk through that process? I'm sure there'll be entrepreneurs here who would take some of the ideas and deliver it in their own company.
If you're in a big company, and by big, I mean anything more than 100 or 200 people, okay? So that's what we call big these days. You have an immune system problem. You try anything disruptive, and there's the legacy thinking and the control structures, the control framework, the culture becomes very, very French and goes, no, 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 pas possible. And you end up in the wrong conversation. And we found a process that's a 10-week engagement that anybody can run that transforms culture at scale inside a large organization. And I've been now in probably 200 of the Fortune 500 boardrooms, and I've only ever seen one path for taking a legacy organization and transforming it. And so first is you run the sprint to break the culture inside, and then you take the crazy geniuses from inside the organization, put them at the edge of the company, and let them build EXOs on the edge, pointing into adjacent spaces. Like Nestle for about 3 or 4 years tried to run Nespresso as a line of business, and it just completely failed because this totally new brand, different delivery model, different supply chain didn't fit inside the mothership. They finally put it on the edge with a different brick wall between the two organizations, and boom, every hotel room in the world has an espresso machine, right? And so that's the kind of thing that we can see when people succeed in this model. The master of this technique is actually Apple, the largest company in the world, right? 2 trillion market cap, going to 3 pretty quickly. They do one thing that nobody has noticed. And yes, they have a great design team and a supply chain, but so do other people. What they do is they have a process where every time they want to look at an industry, they form a small team that's very disruptive. They put the team at the edge of the company, keep them secret and stealth, and say to them, go disrupt that industry. Right? So they have a portfolio of teams looking at watches or payments or retail or cars or education or whatever. Whenever they think something is ready, they use their approach and then go into it. And not by accident are they the biggest company in the world. That's all they do. Nobody's even noticed that that's all they do, right? So we think that's going to be the future for most big organizations. You can see people start to learn it. Microsoft went and kind of connected with OpenAI to radically get into the AI game, right? Google went into cars. And so people are doing that now, and they were starting to learn the discipline of doing that and creating yourself, launching these things off the edge and becoming an ecosystem play. What I love about what you've been doing with Genius is you've been building that from scratch, right? It's an entire ecosystem, and it's a nightmare trying to build an ecosystem. So all kudos to you.
It's super interesting because before AI came along and we were already talking about purpose-driven companies, the analogy I gave as to why purpose was so important, because a lot of you speak about MTP, and when we're talking about some of these large companies, they're all very purpose-driven. Like look at someone like Elon Musk, and every one of his companies is purpose-driven. And the way I would explain it was that if I like when I was at university studying architecture, you're taught that the first thing you need if you're going to be an architect is you need a contour map, right? And that comes from the quantity surveyor, right? So this is the person who surveys the quantities. He like measures like what is the actual hills look like, and then you can build something on top of that. And business plans, if we go back 20, 30 years, business and even MBAs were all designed around start with the market, like what is the contour of the market, like where's the needs in the market, and then basically build something up there like a house, build a house which is there to protect, right? So the whole thing is there's barriers to entry, et cetera, et cetera. And of course, anyone who tries to build a house today, it doesn't work. Why? Because the contours are not fixed anymore. Things are moving so quickly that it's no longer land, it's now sea. You try to build a house in the sea, it just sinks, right? So what you need instead is not a house, you need basically a ship, right? And if you had a ship, then it's not there to protect because obviously you're out there in the elements. It's there to project, right? Which is basically to go somewhere. And so it doesn't matter what the storm is. It doesn't matter who your crew is, as long as you get to your destination, you can, even if the winds are, headwinds, it's okay. You can sometimes you're fastest in headwinds because you're still basically moving towards wherever your destination is, which is purpose, right? So if you don't have that purpose, you're going to end up in the rocks, because you're now a ship. You're not a building. And probably the most important part of this is in the last couple of years, it's gone from a ship to a rocket ship, which is really what an exponential business is all about. One that can go way, 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 way further, where the actual mission, like literally can be going to Mars, right? Like you were talking about something which is far, far further. But it's so interesting how often there are still companies, even startups, that are employing people into a company without thinking about that purpose, right? And the fact that as you do that, it means that process comes over purpose, and the process always has to change, right? If you're exponential, but that purpose has got to be the fixed piece. Could you talk for a moment about that, especially for any entrepreneurs here who go, well, I kind of like the idea of purpose, but I should probably do that after I'm making money versus
Yeah,
realizing actually the purpose comes first, right?
the purpose has to come first. And look, the 200 fastest growing unicorns, they all started with that MTP. And then they added all the other attributes after that. And the reason is that you better be really clear about what fundamental problem you're trying to solve to give you the emotional energy to overcome all the obstacles that the world is going to throw in your way. The best analogy I've ever, by the way, I love your ship to building a house to a boat analogy. I want to come back to that at some point. But the best analogy I've found for the startup world is turtle eggs. A turtle will lay 200 eggs on a beach, and maybe 50 of them don't hatch for whatever reasons, and the rest do hatch. And I have 150 little turtles running towards the ocean, and the birds are eating them, and the animals are eating them. And maybe only 50 get to the water, and they start diving down into the deep, and the fish are eating them. And maybe only 5 to get to the bottom, right? And the investment VC model is when you look at the original nest of 200 eggs, it doesn't matter how smart you are, you can't tell which 5 are going to make it. It's a chaotic process. So you use a portfolio approach to invest in a basket of them and hope that one makes it, right? Well, what happens is when you have a very purpose-driven organization, it knows where it's going and gets there faster because everybody's lined up along the same thing. And when you have that cohesion, it creates like a flow effect. And the whole organization operates in flow because everybody knows what fundamental problem they're trying to solve. Right. So in Google, for example, when they're trying to evaluate 2 projects or put this or invest in this or this, which one delivers the MTP of organizing the world information better? That's where you put your chips. Then you can cascade down decision making, you can decentralize the organization, and you have to start with that. And the MTP turns out to be much, much more important in EXOs than we originally conceived of the model. And now it's mandatory today. So you start with that, and then it becomes incredibly easy. For example, if you're trying to hire, make sure there's alignment between the individual you're trying to bring on board, their MTP and the MTP that you have, right? And the organization's MTP. Because if that's not aligned, why are you bothering?
Right.
And
Yeah.
especially with the younger generation that are purpose-driven anyway. Okay. Now, of course, with the younger generation, once you hire them, you have to figure out how to manage them. That's a whole other book. But in general, we found that the purpose-driven nature becomes endemic and mandatory across all organizations today, even government and NGOs and impact projects, etc.
Very interesting. This is Salima, I have never asked you this question before, so I'm going to ask it now. But obviously, the first place someone should be starting when they're thinking about having an exponential entrepreneurial business is the MTP, right?
Yeah.
So, but after that, right, is there like, especially because there's platforms you can now build, like, someone might be a YouTuber, which can go exponential from the point of view of your brand, but they're leveraging on the interfaces, dashboards, etc. of YouTube, right? So there's certain ones of these you can borrow in. And then there's others where it's like, actually, that's where you need to start from. What would you generally say for kind of a startup or a company that's got limited resources as to, out of these 10, which would be the kind of area that's with the first? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, let me give it a little case study and then I'll bridge into your question. And the case study is the story of TED, right? Chris Anderson takes it over 15 years ago or so, and does 3 things. TED was just a nice conference in Santa Monica, in Monterey, in California. 1,000 people a year are going to it, and he took it over and he did 3 things. The first thing is, what's the MTP? Ideas worth spreading, right? So that became the imprint for everybody associated and inside and outside TED. Second thing he did was he took all the TED Talks and put them on YouTube, leveraging rich media, right? Which is free marketing, essentially. And then he allowed anybody in the TED community to go create a TEDx event. And over a 10-year period, he created a global media brand. And most importantly, he went from a single event happening to global phenomena at 0 cost. That's an unbelievable thing that's unheard of in the history of business. So we have a very prescriptive playbook in the book on how do you build an EXO. Step 1 is, what's your MTP? Okay. Step 2 is either build a community around that MTP or join communities. So for example, if you're trying to cure cancer, there's lots of communities that are trying to do that. Join those or build your own. That's step 2, because community is unbelievably critical for any EXO going forward. Step 3 is you choose a founding team from that community, because now you know like-minded, they're all trying to solve that problem, etc. And step 4 is, what is the breakthrough idea that delivers at least 10x better than the status quo into that ecosystem, right? A 10x better medical device or diagnostic capability or something. If you're 10% better, the market will ignore you. If you're 10x better, they can't ignore you, right? And this is where Tesla is a good example. A combustion engine car has about 2,000 moving parts in the drivetrain, and a Tesla has 17, right? So in terms of design, reliability, cost, etc., manufacturing capability, process, it's just orders of magnitude easier to build a Tesla than a traditional car. And so when you can deliver that, the market can ignore you and you're going to succeed. Once you have your core idea, and note that that's step 4. Most people in history come up with an idea and go, oh, let's get this out there. So step 4 is the idea. Step 5 is you go through more of the lean startup thinking of building a minimum viable product, iterating. And then once you have that a business model, now you add the other attributes, dashboards and algorithms and so on. Then you put in some of the other stuff around it. So we found that process has been very, very, now over 10 years of data, anecdotes, etc., has proven to be very, very simple and clear and very powerful in terms of building an EX. So
that's super interesting. This kind of reminds me of what happened at the beginning of the pandemic when we're running events all over the world and suddenly we couldn't run any events. And at the same time, we knew a lot of our community with engineers who were also wondering how they were going to sell their products. Some of them had restaurants and they had to close down and all these kind of things as well. And of course, like you said, the first thing were all purpose driven, which is how do we go out there and support each other for entrepreneurial growth. And we had a community, which was really lucky. But what we then did was realizing that basically everything was now changing. We also realized that while everyone had products that no longer worked, they also had new problems they didn't have before, right? And so whenever you got problems, you got a market, right? And so what we actually did was we got everyone in our company to basically just pick 20 people that they had the most trust with, just call them all up and say, look, what's the biggest problem you've got right now that if we could help you solve it would actually allow us to basically really move forward, right? And within 1 week, we basically had a whole new set of products we were going to deliver. And we also knew what their problems were. And what we actually ended up doing, one of the biggest things we solved was we basically created something called a trusted buyers market, which was basically a marketplace where everyone was able to, we actually started by going back to front. We said, most people were saying, we don't have money, right? That's our problem, right? We don't know how to earn the money. We said, okay, we're going to start with everyone getting $10,000 credit. We're just going to put it on our system and created this kind of like virtual currency. And you got to spend that money within the week. And you got to basically go out and see who else out there has got interesting products that you could then actually be spending money on and vice versa. And boom, suddenly everyone had customers and everyone had feedback on what to work, how to, and we basically ended up within 1 week, right? Basically going through those steps you just talked through. And I think this is one of the things that a lot of people who might be struggling when their current business model no longer works, they think, oh, it's going to take me a year to figure something new out, when it could be weeks, certainly months, right, that they can actually transform and change. And so can you speak to the speed at which, like, doing it slowly actually is more difficult than doing it fast, right, when it comes to exponential?
Yeah, you want to do it fast and you want to iterate quickly, right? Because and this is where the concept of dashboards comes in. You want to track things do incredibly thorough data capture. And therefore, if something's going right or if something's going wrong, you want to know very quickly, especially in an exponential organization where if things go wrong, like say WeWork, if you've got the wrong unit metrics and you scale that, you're going to end up with a massive problem on your hands. And we saw that happen, right? And so it becomes critical, and you can do this. The metabolism of this is totally only limited by your execution. Right. This is where I think I love what I heard you say, because the more you have community and you bring in a group of people, you can brainstorm ideas and come up with things, try them out very, very quickly, and come up with an end solution very fast. Right? And problem solving, that type of stuff in today's world becomes easier and easier. What I find fascinating with going back to the AI paradigm is now we can have AI helping with some of this area, and that's just going to accelerate even further. Right. So today we have people going, here's my sales plan, and having an AI go, well, have you tried these other 4 things? Right. And you hadn't done the heavy lifting of thinking through the full exhaustive list, but now you have it. And I think this is where it's going to add huge value across the board in every business function that we can see.
Yeah, absolutely. And that kind of brings me on to one thing which we're now sharing with all of our top partners, and I want to share on this call as well, which is how you've done exactly this with OpenEXO. And where we've been different within Genius Group is that within Genius U, we've been largely focusing at students and entrepreneurs. And obviously, you're going into the Fortune 500 and the larger companies, but what you found is the community that actually are sometimes the best at doing that are certified trainers that actually come from more the entrepreneurial space and people that already get how important this is to grow. So when you launched OpenEXO, it was actually launched as a community, but from this community, you then basically have got not just members learning all the latest tools and latest developments within technology, but you've also launched, right, your AIX, which is or Alex,
Yeah,
which
Alex,
is
we call it. What we did was we
yeah.
trained the entire GPT on the book and all the interviews that we've done, et cetera. So you can go in there and say, I have a shipping company based in Brazil. How would I 10x it? And we'll literally look through the entire corpus of the book and go, here's what you need to do. And so this becomes really prescriptive on how you now build any organization.
Yeah, you got it here as well. So if anyone comes onto OpenEXO and even on the first one on the book, and you've got the whole detail on the book, and I highly recommend anyone who hasn't read the book to read it. It's actually really interesting reading the first version of it, which was like 10 years earlier, to then basically this latest version that just came out last year. Co-written with Peter Diamandis and Michael Malone and forward by Ray Kurzweil. And then you've also got chat with Alex here, which you can actually straight away go in, log in, and basically have a conversation here, which is super interesting. And then you've then got the actual community itself with the membership. And we're going to be looking at how we integrate all of this in with our organization. People can go search for different people who are on here, and then you can then get certified to then provide the training at the corporate level. Do you want to just share the thought process and basically what went into building out this whole community and where it sits right now today?
Well, the thesis behind the community originally was we wanted to have people that could help us transform big organizations. So we started building and training people. Okay? And then we started to realize we need more and more of them. And then we realized, wait, they want to build their own community. So let's them give them the tool sets and capabilities to do that. Over the last couple of years, we've retooled our platform to be a place that if you want to build an EXO or transform an existing company into an EXO, this is the community and the tool sets that can help you do that in a way that you can't find anywhere else, because we bring together the technology awareness across AI or 3D printing or whatever exponential technologies, plus the organizational capabilities that allow you to build in that way. And so this is, we put that together. The community is now 35,000 people in 150 countries that we train in this model. So if you're trying to build an EXO and you want some help, you come and you go, hey, I need some help developing my MTP or implementing lean startup thinking or building my lean startup canvas or whatever. And there's a huge number of people. Like if you go to community and type in, I want somebody to understand blockchain and speak Spanish, there's literally like 200 people available to help. Right. And so this, and if you click on any one of them, if you scroll down a bit there, Roger, click on, say, Chander. Okay. And for each one of these people, we have, here's what their bio is and what their MTP is. And if you scroll down a bit, you'll see his MTP. And then a spider chart saying where they're really good or and so on, so you know if that fits your profile. So we have this whole, now we have to build a matching system of people to be able to see it, but we have interests, etc. Here's all the certifications he's earned as a trainer or as a consultant, etc. So when we put somebody, Procter & Gamble wants to come and do a sprint, we find people that have the right caliber and assemble a team literally from the community. And the thing that I found, I interviewed one of them once, and I said, what gets you so excited about being in this? And she's like, 1 minute I'm talking to like the C-suite of Procter & Gamble, and the next minute I'm talking to the Supreme Court judge in Colombia. Right. And you just never get that level of interestingness in anywhere else in the world, because we're trying to transform the whole world. So we work with government departments, we work with big companies, we work with small companies, medium-sized impact projects, you name it. I'm actually here in LA presenting EXO into the XPRIZE world because they need to turn themselves into an EXO. And we've got a whole host of communities now that can help them and help the teams in XPRIZE operate in this new way.
That's super interesting. And I think this is part of the whole issue that everyone's already sensing, is that if you're not part of a community, already you need to be, right? Especially on the things that actually allow you to accelerate your learning, because it's the community that always is going to bring the best learning to the top. And with things moving so quickly, trying to go out there and use the media or even social media is just way, 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 way too overwhelming to try and figure out what's really going on there. Whereas community becomes really that filter if you found the right community to then build, to actually grow on, which is super exciting. And I'm guessing a lot of your community members end up getting into partnerships with each other as well and projects with each other.
Oh yeah, they've been building companies and organizations as they find people they bond with or trust with. Once they find people that are like-minded in terms of MTP, then they go forward. And we have a sub-community that's just focused on generative AI, and that's about 500 people. And so the conversations and they're unbelievably rich because when you bring a hive mind to bear on some problems, you can solve it very, very quickly.
Very, very exciting. So for everyone who's listening, you can already go and jump into the OpenExO community. With all our partners, we're going to be sharing exactly how we're linking all of that together with the programs that we're running. And as many of you already know, we're running our World Game with the new Renaissance over this whole year. And a big, big, big part of our whole focus over the year is basically igniting 10 million geniuses, right? And actually tracking $100 million worth of income using our gems. And a big part of this as well, building a global community of change makers and attracting a Justice League of thought leaders. Obviously, Salim is one of them. And we're going to be working with more and more of the OpenExO community and basically bringing both entrepreneurial skill sets as well as all of the exponential skill sets, which are, I believe, the two most important ones for anyone who's going into this future economy is the most important thing. Just for anyone, by the way, who might happen to be watching this for the first time, everything we're doing is basically part of our Genius Entrepreneur Mastermind. We've got every single month podcast happening. There is a QR code here if you'd like to come and just trial it out for free and jump into our community on the entrepreneurial side. And we will give you more info on how you can also be part of everything happening within OpenExO and this adventure that we're all on together as well. And if I'm about to bring on board, because with our community, we always are giving awards, and we have our Shine Awards, which I'm going to get our head of our partnerships and community, Michelle Nolting, to be sharing in a moment. But before we do, what would you say, Salim, as kind of like final words of advice for people as we move into this acceleration that we're actually in and probably will be in for the next 5+ years right now?
I mean, this is the single best time in the history of humanity to be an entrepreneur. And the phrase that's been bouncing around my head for the last few weeks is disruptive, permissionless innovation. When you try to do anything disruptive in the past, you had to get permission from your government or your company or your community to do it. Today, you can get together with a few friends like Vitalik did, Buterin did with a few friends, and boom, created Ethereum. And every banker in the world hates it. They don't understand it at all. But yet you have this $400 billion ecosystem created out of nothing just because they had a vision, right? And so that's what's possible today. And I'll go back to the point that this is the only thing that's going to change the future. And Lord help us, we need to change from old mentalities and modalities to new ones. And that's the transition that we all need to be facilitating.
Very, very exciting. Very exciting. And Salim is going to be also a keynote at the Abundance 360, which is the summit which Peter Diamandis runs. I will be there as well, and I'm looking forward to that. And we're going to be running an AI day and a program, for all of our GEM members off the back of that as well, including physically in Los Angeles, which is where it's being held. So really looking forward to that. And with that, Michelle, I'm going to bring Michelle on so that she can share on the Shine Awards. And Salim, thank you so much for being here. Really, really appreciate it. And look forward to our adventures together in the future.
Likewise, great to have been here.
Awesome. Thanks very much, everyone. Hey, Michelle.
Hey, Roger. Thank you so much. That was great. Awesome learning as always. So yeah, we'll get on to the awards. But I appreciate
Fabulous.
the learning.
Thanks very much, everyone. Cheers.
All right. Bye. All right. So here we go. As usual, welcome to the new year. We're already at the end of January. And at the end here, we always do our awards. So my screen is just loading. Bear with me for the Athens internet. It's special today. So while it loads, Salim, that was a really great session. Thank you so much for that. And I think our community will really love it. So bye. These are the awards. I put this quote in because I think it was kind of inspirational to think of something a little bit different. And I think, imagination is more important than knowledge sometimes. So I thought it was, let's get going on where we can create magic this year. So our Shine Awards are designed to nominate for our partners, community, and customers within the Genius Metaversity. And we have monthly winners and we have quarterly winners. The prizes are here. And these prizes are there to help you, assist you in your entrepreneurial business to make it more interesting. Yes. So nominations this time around, thanks to the team who nominated everybody. We have 4 nominees: Kyron, Anne, Mike and Marcus, and Barker. And the reason I am nominating them is, firstly, for Kyron, really is the founder and CEO of Freedom Co. and the country leader for New Zealand. And, he definitely helps entrepreneurial-minded investors quit their day jobs so they can spend more time doing what they want to do and spend time doing things that matter. And he's been part of our community for many, many moons. And we reached out for him to support us as the lead facilitator in the AI micro school in January. And ultimately, he was phenomenal. His sense of humor, his knowledge, he shows up, he ties everything together. He's amazing. And considering we had him on multitude of time zones, he was sleeping in weird times in the day, I wanted to just acknowledge him for his contribution to this community and his dedication in making everything that we do better. So thanks, Kyron, for that. Secondly, nominating Anne. Anne is the founder of SuperX Academy and the country leader for Vietnam. Anne's a phenomenal leader. And like I said, definitely somebody who's an expert with a remarkable personal and professional growth of his own. And the last time I saw him was actually in Bali in October. And one of the big things is he inspires magic within his team. And we have the team of SuperX that came and they all attended the micro school. And I wanted to acknowledge Anne because he motivated the team to be there, to show up and do their best. And one of his team members, Katrina, actually won the micro school. So I think he really is somebody who believes in bringing out the best in his people. And so I wanted to acknowledge him today for his leadership skills. All right. Next, we have Mike and Marcus, and I've grouped them together. Loving the sunglasses, Marcus, very, very cool. Country leaders for the UK and co-founders of Black Swan Futures Ltd, big company name. And they basically, Mike and Marcus joined as country leaders for the UK at the end of December, like right on the mark. And they're both passionate about AI, entrepreneurship, learning, making a difference, leaving a legacy. So they both joined as junior facilitators with Kyron on the micro school. And I think it was great to have, firstly, a 16-year-old who gives immense value from that perspective, and somebody who really, from Mike's perspective, who has the knowledge in business and brings it together. And they're both super passionate about AI and making a difference. So I wanted to recognize them for showing up and participating as facilitators. Last but not least is Barker. Barker is a speaker, technologist, podcaster. She's done many amazing things. She's also joined us as the city leader of Florida. And, she's super passionate about technology and AI and all of these things. So spoke to her at the end of last year and said, hey, do you want to come on and be a facilitator with us here? So because she's such a dynamic woman who already has a mentor, who shares knowledge, experiences, fosters a culture of learning and growth, she actually added immense value to the NASA group in the AI micro school. And it was good perspectives, and it was something that really helped our community. So I wanted to acknowledge her for her contribution. All right. So, and the winner, it's always that time, isn't it? The winner is Kyron. So well done to Kyron. I'm pretty certain that you've heard about this award before. So the team will reach out. But thank you so much. And we're really grateful for everything that you did over the last period in January. And so, guys, that's pretty much it. Congratulations to everybody. If you have any questions, please drop us a message, and we're totally happy to help. And that's it from me today. So wishing you a happy rest of your week. Be the best version of yourself, and I will see you guys soon.